Parenting has always been hard, but parenting is even harder in the digital age. Parents face an unprecedented challenge that no generation has had to handle before. Technologies like the smartphone can be like bringing a wild tiger cub into your home that in time, as it grows, begins to threaten to devour your children. In this video, I'm going to give you 10 tips for taming tech in the home. And if you watch to the end, I'll give you a couple of bonus tips. I confess, as much as I've embraced technology, some days I wish I could go back to a time before the internet and smartphones, when life was simpler. I know, it's wishful thinking and pointlessly vain. The path must be forward, not backward. But it shouldn't be a heedless path or a reckless journey. One of my purposes for making videos for this channel is to help kickstart some deeper thinking about the path forward in our households as we learn how to better handle these technologies and start taking some steps in a better direction. I hope you will gain wisdom and pass it along to others, and I'm going to demonstrate what that process may look like by passing along some wisdom I've picked up along the way on my own journey of parenting. It won't be easy, but have courage. Think of the time as a child when you started to learn how to ride a bike, and then the training wheels were removed. An older sibling, a parent, or a friend would hold the bike upright and give it a push as you began to pedal, and off you went, or down you went. We don't always get it right the first try, but you must learn to pedal on your own. I'm sure you'll scrape your knees in this new chapter of life, but don't give up. If you have a crash, get back on the bike and try again. Ready for the first push? Tip number 1. Prioritize presence. It's not just kids who are distracted by smartphones. Make it a habit to prioritize the people in the room with you and show them that they are more important than your digital connections. It is critical that your children learn from your example. Are you often distracted by your phone? Are your children in competition with your phone for your attention? I was surprised to come across a novel word for this practice of ignoring your children while distracted by a smartphone. Some have dubbed it phubbing. It's a mashup of phone and snubbing. Do you snub your children or others in your physical presence by ignoring them while giving preference to someone or something on your phone? Tip number 2, be a good role model. When it comes to taming tech, one of the biggest hills to climb is to become a good role model for your children. They need help navigating the digital age, and you have the best potential to be the best person to provide that guidance. Have you considered how much of their behavior reflects your own? Young children and teens collect important cues about life through watching dad and mom. They may not be consciously thinking about mimicking your actions, but they pick things up for good or for bad along the way. You're probably aware of the classic parenting proverb, more is caught than taught. It's easy to get frustrated with the way our children interact with smartphones or other devices used for entertainment or media consumption, but are we ready to make the needed changes in our own lives before we try to help our teens make needed changes in their lives? Jesus gave a simple parable about taking the log out of your own eye before trying to take the speck out of someone else's eye. In this case, we have a culture of parents who are blinded by the attraction of smartphones. And we're seemingly not capable of making good judgments for ourselves, much less being in a good place to guide our children. You may be fully aware of your own bad habits, and you don't want to be a hypocrite to your children. So you don't address those habits in their lives. I'm all for keeping hypocrisy out of parenting as much as possible, but continuing the current course without making any corrections because you don't want to be a hypocrite is not the highest virtue of parenting. The better path is to get things in order in your own life so that you can first be a good example to your children. They really need you to be a mentor, but effective mentoring requires you to model the right behavior first. Tip number 3, phone-free zones. By the way, if you find these tips helpful, consider picking up a copy of my book, Help! The Smartphone Ate My Family, available on Amazon. This video is based on a chapter in that book. Phone-free zones are good for both places and times, like when you're having dinner together. That's both a time and a place not to let phones encroach on this important family time. That small piece of advice brings us to a simple subject that should be part of your overall plan: family dinner time. So many families are neglecting this important aspect of cultivating a stronger family. A scene in the Netflix original documentary, The Social Dilemma, shows a scripted vignette of a concerned mom making an effort to get her disjointed family together for a family meal without phones. She repurposed a plastic kitchen safe with a timer meant to lock up cookies to secure everyone's devices for an hour during dinner. The scene shows the awkwardness of a family who doesn't know what to do with themselves around the table without their phones. Conversation was forced, and the 11-year-old Isla hears a notification and gets up from the table to check her phone. Her mom tells her the container is locked and to ignore it. As the family attempts to get a conversation going again, it's interrupted by a loud crash as everyone suddenly turns towards the noise and sees that Isla has smashed the container into pieces with a metal tool. They all gape as she grabs her phone and stomps off to be alone in her room. It was a cleverly scripted scene that could easily happen in many homes today, but don't let that scare you from trying. I wouldn't just spring it on your family without prior communication, but don't hesitate to set boundaries. I'm reminded of a grandmother who shared with me that she keeps a basket at the door to collect her grandchildren's devices when they come over. At the beginning, her grandkids whined and complained, but without their phones, they were able to have fun playing games and interacting with each other. They made memories that they otherwise would have missed. As a rule, keeping all screens out of bedrooms is generally a good idea, including smartphones. They are so small and portable that everyone thinks it's okay to take them anywhere and everywhere. But you are the parents, and you can set the rules. It's easiest to set these rules before a teen has access to a smartphone, rather than try to set up the rules once you start experiencing problems. You have the most leverage as a parent when your teen has not yet been given permission to use a smartphone. Other phone-free zones might be family vacations, eating out together, during church activities, or visiting family or friends. Tip number 4, watch your media diet. The biggest challenge for any food diet is self-control. It's also the key to becoming a better athlete, and it's also necessary for gaining better control over your media consumption habits. Too often, we're controlled by impulse, cultural pressure, or a lack of goals and direction. Self-control is the opposite of excess or being out of control. When applied to food, it means that you're not overeating. Moderation takes self-control when applied to media or entertainment, and it means setting limits and sticking to them. It takes discipline to not let it get out of hand in your family. But where do you start? And how much is too much? According to the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Heart Association, they recommend 2 hours or less per day for teens. Granted, there are different ways we interact with screens. Some screen time is essential for work or school, some is passive entertainment, and some for education. Some screen time is for creative purposes like audio-visual content creation, and some screen time is for communication with others. Not all screen time is created equal. The Bible affirms our need for self-control and gives us an analogy of a disciplined athlete. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 and 25 says, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it, and everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things." And that means to exercise self-control. Now, they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Most people must be convinced that the effort to exercise self-control is in their best interest. Do you know what I found to be helpful with developing self-control over my screen time? I make sure my day is filled with better activities. We often default to screen time because it doesn't take as much effort as other things we might be doing and enjoying at the same time. Learn to cultivate self-control in your life and don't give up. Tip number 5, trade up. In 2005, a Canadian blogger, Kyle McDonald, inspired by a game he played as a kid, dreamed of trading up, starting with a red paperclip, until achieving his goal for a house or an island or a house on an island. It seemed like an impossible venture, but after 14 trades over the course of a year, he successfully traded up for a house. I love the idea of trading something with less value for something with greater value. Consider trading screen time, which has less value, for things with greater value, such as meaningful family activities, board games, outdoor sports, engaging hobbies, cooking together, crafts, gardening, or any number of non-screen activities. Make a list of things you have been neglecting due to the habit of defaulting to screens. Consider it an investment in the lives of your children. I encouraged teens for many years to write down 5 or more activities that they would enjoy doing that don't involve a screen. Maybe their bike is getting rusty in their garage, or maybe they want to learn to play an instrument, learn to play tennis, learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, build a remote-controlled airplane, learn how to build some wooden shelves, go ice skating, or plant a garden. You name it. There's so many things. The list may require parents, though, to get involved. The possibilities are endless, and each child is a unique person, so what is it that they neglect because of the habit of the diversion of screen time? Tip number 6, delay when possible. It's easier to keep a door closed for a longer period of time than it is to shut the door once you've opened it. You're not holding your children back if you don't give them access to a smartphone. You are actually giving them the childhood they deserve. Once you give a child a smartphone, your parenting becomes much more complicated, and their lives become more troublesome. When problems arise, and they usually do, it's much more difficult to get your parenting going in a better direction than the challenge you may face from delaying the smartphone in your child's life. This principle can apply to many different parenting scenarios, but the smartphone should certainly be delayed as long as reasonable. Granted, the more they are around other kids their age who don't have the same guidance, the more challenging your parenting becomes. Just because it's challenging doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Tip number 7, intermittent screen fasts. In my book, Help the Smartphone Ate My Family, I share about my first time going on a media fast when I was 17 years old. I desired to walk closer with God, and I became uneasy with some of my media choices. And at the time, I didn't think my choices had a negative effect in my life, but God was leading me to make some changes. I planned a 2-week media fast and put all of my devices and media in a box and in my closet. This step I took was early 1990s, so my stash consisted of music cassettes, a boombox, and my Nintendo game system. I also avoided television and the movie theater during that time. Going without electronic media was really hard at first, but in a short amount of time, I noticed substantial changes happening in my life because of this break from entertainment. In fact, after 2 weeks were up, I gladly chose to continue my media fast for a longer period of time, because I benefited mentally and spiritually, emotionally from this break. A decade later, I was serving as a youth pastor, and it was this positive experience in my own life that influenced me to encourage teens to consider the benefits of a media fast. The positive experience from my media detox eventually became the catalyst for starting the nonprofit ministry, Media Talk 101. My message for teens to take some time to unplug was more than a decade ahead of its time, before it became mainstream to read or hear about the importance of a digital detox. My own story is not unique for those who have gone on a media fast. I featured several stories in my documentary Captivated, Finding Freedom in a Media Captive Culture, which you can watch on this channel for free. Tip number 8. Allow boredom to result in non-screen activity. One of the leading causes of excessive screen time is boredom. When we're bored, we don't know what to do with ourselves. So we have developed a habit of dealing with boredom by gravitating to screens to entertain us. TV, movie, YouTube, social media, and video games have become the default for many people, but it's not a good default. Boredom can be a terrific opportunity for your children to learn to be creative and have fun without screens. So make sure your children are equipped with non-screen options for playtime, for craft time, for reading, and other activities. Don't fall for the incessant whining as if they're going to die if you don't let them default to screen time, because it's the path of least resistance. A backyard is also helpful, or a park nearby, but you should also plan for indoor discovery time. Your tactics will have to be adapted to your children's age. In time, they usually discover that they actually enjoy the screen-free activities when they are given no other options. Tip number 9. Cultivate real and healthy social networks. I'll dive deeper into the subject of social media in another video sometime, but for now, I want to point out the difficulty of maintaining a large number of digital connections in your life. These superficial acquaintances do not fulfill the need for meaningful relationships, and too often people think they can substitute a few meaningful relationships with a larger group of shallow and superficial online connections. The need for fulfilling friendship can't be pieced together by hundreds and sometimes thousands of different people. Just like collecting a pound of pennies will never equal a pound of gold. Gold is presently around $2,700 per ounce, so a pound of gold is worth $43,200. The equivalent worth in pennies would require 4,320,000 pennies. 100 pennies weigh 8.8 ounces, so the number of pennies needed to match a pound of gold would weigh 23,760 pounds. Over 11 tons. You couldn't carry it or benefit from it easily. The more social media connections you have, the heavier the burden you bear with depreciating value when it comes to finding meaning in personal relationships. Years ago, I became intrigued when learning about something known as Dunbar's number. The term kept finding its way into news articles and radio interviews and discussions about social media, but what is it? To quote Wikipedia, Dunbar's number is a suggested cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships. Relationships in which an individual knows who each person is and how each person relates to every other person. Dunbar's number is 150. His studies have shown that beyond 150 people, humans have a much harder time keeping track of each other. One study was done using the phone data from 6 billion calls from 35 million people. Out of those 150 people in your life, they found that only 5 or so are core people you maintain a close relationship with. The next layer outward is your pals, not as close as your besties, and that number is 10, give or take a few. So now you're up to 15. Next is your acquaintances, who are around 35 people. Now we're up to about 50 altogether. And of those, only 5 are people you are in regular interaction with. Another 10 less so. Then there's the 35 you have a little less interaction with. Remember, this is based on phone data, not digital social media. You've actually talked with the person. Beyond that 50, the other 100 in Dunbar's number of 150 are people you rarely talk to, but in the course of a year, you may call them and they may call you at least once. I realize that this generation has gravitated towards instant messaging and texts for communication. This nonverbal interaction might be your preference, but it's proving to be a substandard way of developing good relationships. Using today's convenient communication shortcuts is a problem if it's the default rather than supplemental to preferred means, like in person or a FaceTime call or a phone call. Cultivating a few deep relationships is not only practical and essential for our lives, but it was also modeled by Jesus. He taught the multitudes of people on occasions, but most of his time was spent with 12 disciples. Out of the 12, there were 3 who spent extra time with him. It looks like Robin Dunbar only lately discovered what Jesus already knew. Tip number 10, tame your notifications. One big step will be to learn how to turn off distracting notifications that are constantly vying for your attention. Mobile operating systems and phone manufacturers will have different ways to change these settings, but you need to educate yourself and learn how to take control of your phone. When you download apps, they often have notifications turned on by default. You may not have paid attention when you were prompted to select your preferences. No problem, you can change that now. Go to your settings and find where to change your notification preferences. Start by turning off all non-essential notifications. Turn off social media app notifications, YouTube notifications, and podcast notifications. In fact, you can turn nearly all of them off. I feel like Luke Skywalker when he was about to be crushed in a trash compactor while trying to convince C-3PO and R2-D2 to shut the trash compactor off. C-3PO tells R2-D2 to shut them all off. What should you leave on? Phone calls and texts may be all that you need. It may be more challenging for apps like WhatsApp that serve as a multi-purpose tool and can be a mix of essential and non-essential notifications. In some cases, you can limit notifications based on the favorites in your contact list. The notifications are likely to suck you into a vortex of distraction from your family. You don't have to let them take control of your life and your family any longer. Turn off the notifications to start. In the late 1800s, a Russian scientist named Ivan Pavlov was studying the digestive process in dogs. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Well, maybe not. In his research, he observed that dogs started salivating when they could see or smell food. This was a natural biological response, but Pavlov accidentally discovered something he wasn't looking for. He noticed that the dog started salivating at the sight of his assistant, who would usually bring them food, even when he didn't have food to give them. Don't worry, the dogs didn't want to eat the assistant, but Pavlov discovered that this was a learned behavior, a conditioned response. The dogs associated the presence of the assistant with the arrival of food. Pavlov diverted his studies and began to experiment with the sound of a metronome. The metronome alone didn't have any effect on the dogs, but then he began feeding them at the same time as the sound. In time, the dogs associated the metronome with food, and just hearing the sound would cause them to salivate even when food was not present. The habit-forming process is now referred to as classical conditioning in psychology, and it also works on humans. So, what does it have to do with smartphones? We have been conditioned to respond to the vibration or sounds of notifications on our smartphones. You may not start salivating, at least I hope you don't, but there are other physiological responses to this stimulus. You're not anticipating food, so what do you think you'll be getting at the conditioning sound of notifications? One of the physiological responses happening is a small dopamine hit in your brain. This is a result of an emotional response to the sound of the notification. There's an anticipation of something exciting, or something dreadful, or something that makes you happy, or something that makes you sad. It might lead to feeling anxious, or it may result in elation. You may have been waiting to get a response from someone, or find out that someone reacted to a social media post, a text, or an email. These anticipated emotions are like the meal that Pavlov's dogs were waiting for. We don't salivate, but our brain triggers the release of dopamine. When this kind of stimulation continues on a regular basis, you are being conditioned for certain responses. The first is a compulsion to check the notification, even if you're doing something else that's important, such as having a meal with your family or having a conversation with someone in person. This repeated behavior can lead to habit formation or habituation. This problem is now referred to as checking behavior. It is the conditioned response to a conditional stimulus. It can lead to excessive use of your smartphone, habitual distraction, and dependency. It also negatively affects the people around you who are interrupted or ignored because of your conditioned response to phone notifications. How can you tame your notifications? Simple. Turn them off. Go to your settings and take back control over your attention. The same studies also show that you can be unconditioned through a process referred to as extinction. The app makers know what they're doing. They have studied the psychology of conditioning and are leveraging it for their own purposes. So stop being Pavlov's dogs and don't let others train your behavior. As promised, a couple bonus tips. First one, go grayscale. Did you know that you can turn the color off on your smartphone and go grayscale? For some people, this simple trick helps them spend less time on their phone. Everything looks bland and less appealing to the eyes, so it becomes a way to retrain your behavior and curtail your phone usage when not essential. Here's another bonus tip. Entertainment in community. You can also make better entertainment or recreational choices by watching a movie together as a family instead of everyone being on their own devices and doing their own thing. This can help cultivate time together. I'm a huge fan of entertainment in community versus entertainment in isolation. Last bonus tip. Sign up your teens for my free online course called Screen Time 101. There are 19 short video lessons with follow-along notes, quizzes, and bonus content. So go sign them up at screentime101.com today. One more bonus tip. Your devices need an earlier bedtime. One of the obstacles to sufficient sleep for adults and children is our less than healthy late night screen habits. I'll explain why in another video, which is all about the importance of a good night's sleep. For now, a simple but helpful habit is to make sure your electronic devices are put to bed an hour before your children's bedtime. Once again, if you found this helpful, like and subscribe, and consider picking up my book, Help, The Smartphone Ate My Family, available on Amazon.